Thanks, Christian, for the invitation and for the introduction. Yes, we are from Zaragoza. Spain is a global country, and all the managers are based in Madrid or Barcelona. Hopefully, there will be more and more managers. Just 2 words about us. We are Augustus Capital Asset Management. This is an all new and small project, all because our main vehicle is an Spanish SICAV. It's not a fund. It's LIERDE. LIERDE is managed by my colleague Juan since 1994. We are co-managing the fund since 2002. We are more than 15 years together. And last year we got the license from the Spanish regulator to have our own asset manager. So that's the reason that we are new. And we are small because we start opening the fund to the general public in 2013 with a little bit over 30 million, close to 40, and today we have around 350. So we are very happy, but we are still very small. Being small, we think that it's important and it's an advantage to find small companies. The company that we are presenting today is Tinexta. Tinexta is an Italian company. It's small, as I said. It's a value company in our view, and it's a digital company. So when you join digital, small, value, and Italian, I perfectly understand that everybody here starts to have doubts, yeah? So we like to split the investment case in 3 different parts. The first one is the company. The company is a company with over 10 years of history. As I said, small. The EBITDA is over 60 million, 66, but growing, 62 last year. It has over close to 1,300 employees, and the stock is listed since 2014, so over 5 years. The market cap today is close to 500 million, and it has an strategic shareholder. We'll see later that this is very important for the business. And this is one of the key advantages of being small, that the coverage is really low, just for local brokers, for a digital company that wants to be a pan-European player. It's an important investment for us. We are since September last year. The return so far is very good, but this is not important. The important thing is that we still see a lot of value in this company. Tinexta is divided in 3 business units. I'm going to spend most of the time in the digital trust, credit information and management. This is a cash cow business with 3 players where there will be consolidation. I think that I don't need to spend a lot of time here. And then an innovation and marketing services that has a lot of synergies with this business, okay? Both businesses are services for companies, big and small, and there are synergies between the 2 of them. So what is a digital trust business? All of us know that we live in a digital society, that one day we'll have connected mobility. I say one day because we have autonomous cars. We will need identity to have access to public services. We have cybersecurity, but everything needs trust. And trust is a business where Tinexta has a clear advantage. And the advantage, as it cannot be in another way in Europe, comes from regulation. Disruption is what changes things, and in Europe, unfortunately, you need regulation. Regulation in Italy was that since 2005, you had the certified electronic mail as valid as the registered mail, especially for communication with the public administration. Indeed, in 2013, all the communications of companies with the public administration had to be done with a certified electronic mail. So that means that Italy was the first country where you had players investing in technology to have a digital identity. This is a business that is growing, and especially once again because disruption comes in the form of regulation. We have since 2014 a regulation for electronic identification and trust services for the whole European Union, and is effective since July 2016. So being the first country where you have the regulation is a clear advantage, and in the case of Tinexta, they started to consolidate, as a first mover, they started to consolidate the European market. They firstly bought 51% of one of the main players in Spain, Camer Firma, and last year they bought 50% of the biggest player in Luxembourg. Most of the people here are fund managers, so we understand that Luxembourg is key because a digital identity is not something just related with people, it's something related with companies, with investment vehicles. So through Luxembourg, they have access to Benelux, France, and also small, but to the United Kingdom. They want to go on with the European consolidation, and the next step is the Nordics, and after the Dutch area. It's not just of a first mover, the first mover advantage is not just that you are the first one concentrated in the market, it's also that you have the best products in the market. We are talking about digital identity, but there are other services that companies need. For example, TOP is one of their main products. TOP is a trusted onboarding platform, and it's a solution that takes away from banks all the compliance risk. When you try to be the new client of a bank online, for example, ING or BNP, there will be a process that it will be done by Tinexta, and the bank is not going to have any compliance risk. That solution has a return on investment for the client over 170%. The payback is lower than 6 months, and the most important thing is that the reduction in fraud is of over 80%. A second important product is GoSign, that basically this is a paperless solution. Just think about all the contracts that you have already signed this year, that instead of using paper, if you can do it on a digital platform. When you are a generalist and you find this kind of small companies that they have an edge in technology, obviously you are not 100% that if you are in the best player or not, and it's going to be a relevant player. So it's very important to see what is the level of clients that they have. When you see at the clients of Tinexta, you may find here very top clients in almost all the verticals, from banking to consumer credits, telcos, utilities. You have the UniCredits, the Deutsche Bank. You may see here very important names. I told you before that the credit information and management system is just a cash cow where you have 3 players. One day there will be consolidation, and these guys will be buyers or sellers, but the growth is just 1-2% is GDP, but there will be an increase in margins because of the consolidation. And then you have the innovation and marketing services, that this is a very interesting business, that basically you have to think that we had an extremely big recession in Europe, especially in the south of Europe, and the small companies need to go abroad, need to be global. So what Tinexta is doing is helping companies to open new markets. Just think about a small food producer of tomato in Italy. Tinexta is helping them to find new distribution networks. The second part of the business is that you know that the European Union, especially at the administration level, is a little bit a kind of a mess, and you have many subsidies for companies that small companies don't even know. Tinexta is helping the companies to get, for example, a subsidy for R&D, so with companies have a recurrent contract with Tinexta to know all the possible help from governments that they may have. This is a very low capital intensive business, very recurrent and high margins. I told you before that they have an strategic stakeholder, and this is one of the key advantages of the investment case. Techno Holding owns 56% of the company and is owned by the main chambers of commerce of Italy. That means that you have a public owner. It's something that usually investors don't appreciate, but in this case it's very positive. We are talking about a trust business. If tomorrow I open a trust business and I tell you, please give me the right to be the one who says that you are who you are, I think that you will say, okay, this guy is based in Zaragoza. I prefer, if I have the chambers of my city, giving me a digital identity. If you are Microsoft, I'm also sure that you will prefer the chamber of my city being the one that says that I am who I say that I am. Okay? So it's very important to have a public investor a public shareholder in this business. The history just here is a company with over 10 years. That's very important for us. In the investments, we like companies that they have a track record. The track record is a track record of expansion of margins. The EBITDA margin is improving from the 20% that they have in 2015. Today, they are over 26. It's very simple. This business is a software model business. You have the investment in R&D for the digital identity. The more clients that you have, the higher margin. So it's a fantastic business because the operating leverage is very high. And this is also one of the positives of the investment case today, is that when we invest in September, this was the business plan, this company wanted to have over 240 million of sales by 2020, but by the end of last year, they have to update the business due to the growth that they are seeing in the market and the advantage of being the first mover. They are going to be over the targets of 2020-2019, and they are talking to have over 290 million just organically in 2021 from the 240 that they had the previous year. As I said before, software business model, the EBITDA margins, the only way that they can go is up. So basically, when we discovered Tinexta, it was a financial holding company. Today it's an integrated group and already starting the consolidation in Europe. So that's the business, and the second part is that you have a fantastic company, high quality, but you have to be sure that the price is right. So Tinexta is a company that clearly has a compounder DNA. The return on capital employed is over 400%. Again, software business, no capital, but barriers to entry, because trust is a trust business, but you need to be trusted. Return on equity very high, 27%. Free cash flow yield very high. You have the cash needed for investments, and a very low payout. That we'll see later that this is very important, as if you have a low payout, it's because you are reinvesting and you will generate a higher value for your shareholders. Not priced in. This stock was trading at 7 times when we did the first investment. Nowadays, we think that in Europe, in small and mid caps, is something that is quite common. This is in the last 5 years, this is the third name that we find in Italy trading at this level, being really a compounder. I don't know if you know, Reply is another Italian company that was a similar situation. The market is moving more and more because of macro dynamics, and you have global players that, because they are based in Italy, even if they have the businesses abroad, they have a reduction in the price, and you have the opportunity. But before showing the potential that we see, it's important to explain how we value the companies. So for us, we split value in 2 parts. Okay, we think that any company that you invest has a fair price, and that gives you the infra-valuation. Based on the return on capital that you have, how much you can reinvest, you have a fair value. So if you are trading below that fair value, you have an infra-valuation. Secondly, you have a value creation, and the value creation for us is the most important thing. The value creation is not something new. We just are following the investment philosophy of Warren Buffett, that basically is you have the net profit, and you may do 2 things. You may reinvest in the business and be a compounder, increase the book value, or you may pay dividends to your shareholders and you don't have any possibility to reinvest. So at the end of the day, that's the margin of safety. We don't know when the infra-valuation is going to be closed, and we'll see later that Tinexta is trading cheap, but the most important thing is that they're going to create value the following years. So based on that split, what is the infra-valuation? Tinexta today is trading close to 10 times enterprise value operating profit, but based on the return on capital and the reinvestment capacity, we estimate that the fair value should be close to 12 times. That gives an infra-valuation close to 40%. On the other side, and is the most important one, these guys are going to be reinvesting the next years, and I'm going to be increasing the book value plus a dividend yield of 3%. That gives a value creation around 20% per year. We don't know when the infra-valuation is going to be closed, but we know that by the end of this year, if this stock is not up another 10%, will be cheaper than today. Why? Because the value of the business is 20% higher. So that's the main criteria every time that we choose a company. In this case, just to finish, we see a potential over 140 for the next 4 years, and that gives up an annual equivalent of 26%. So that's the presentation, and I think that we have now enough time for questions. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation. Just looking at the company, over the last years, it's grown mainly through M&A in Italy, and then they did the Spanish and the Luxembourgian acquisition. How comfortable are you that the acquisitions internationally will be as successfully as the Italian ones? They appear to be at higher multiples, and the CEO doesn't really own any shares.
That's a very good question. The acquisitions in this company are paid mainly with earnouts. So that's something that we like when you have a company doing a lot of M&A. The best way to be sure that what you buy is at the right price is that you have an earnout and the management of the acquired companies are going to be involved in the business. That's the current situation. The second point is that the highest risk M&A was done in Italy because they were buying companies to acquire technology. For example, Visura is a company with technology for legal, for lawyers. You have that technology, and when you buy Firma, you are going to be able to offer that technology in a new country. So in a simple way, it's true that the multiple that you pay for Spain is a little bit higher compared with the multiple that you have in Italy, but it's always the same when you buy a distribution network. What you are doing is that you are buying distribution for your technology. We were, I think it was by November of last year, in an event of Firma, and you will be surprised of the level of technology that we have today in Spain. And these guys are going to be very helpful for Firma. They are growing over 50% already in Spain, and in Luxembourg, they are not disclosing so far the growth. And one of the reasons is that they are trying to organize how to manage with that growth. So it's not a matter of multiples, it's a matter of all the potential that you have. And the second part of the question regarding the management, it's true that the management, they don't have a big stake in the company, they don't have the number of shares, that is not relevant. But I said before, you have the chambers of commerce of Italy, of Spain, of Luxembourg, and for them, this business is key, they need the dividend and they need basically the profits to sustain the structure of the chamber. So we think that being in the same train, that people who are going to care about the business, even if it's not the CEO, is not a bad investment.
Thanks. And then just one more. Over the last years, growth has really come from innovation and marketing services. How dependent is that business on, let's say, current subsidies, which may not be there in a few years?
That's also a very good question. Last year is a clear example. You see the EBITDA of last year is just in the last quarter was 3 million more than the plan of the company, and the reason was that there was a special subsidy that many companies were applying. Every time that we speak with them, they say the same. This is not as recurrent, especially in the subsidy side, but we know how is the situation in Europe, and every new government, what they do is a new plan to help companies. And you have many, many small companies, so it's not as recurrent as the digital trust business, where you have an annual fee for your digital identity, but the real thing is that every year you have new subsidies because we have a weak economy and you need help from governments to the companies. So at the end of the day, it's much more recurrent than it looks.
Thanks.
Very interesting business. It seems that they have several minorities in different companies. Can you provide a little bit more color about how do you evaluate those minorities for the enterprise value calculation and see what's your view on that?
By the end of this year or half of next year, there will be no minorities. All of them have put options, that is the value in the balance sheet, and the company will be just Lux Trust and Firma, and then you have to, Lux Trust is consolidated by the equity method, so it's very simple, and in Firma is the only one that you have to do the valuation of the minorities, but the rest of the business is already consolidated, so it's not really relevant.
On the digital trust business, how is the revenue model? Is it a contract and then renewed, or is it a subscription business? How does it work?
Digital identity is something that you pay once per year. You have your digital identity, and it's a small amount. So that's very important. That trust is more relevant than price. If you have your digital identity with Camer Firma and Fábrica Nacional de Moneda y Timbre, that is another competitor in Spain, calls you and tells you that it's going to charge you 50 cents less, I think that you're not going to change. Okay, so it's an annual payment, recurrent revenue. One of the top and goes on is 30% of the division and is growing very high double digits. In top, you have two parts. You have a part that is an initial consultancy period where, for example, with ING, they pay for one-off for the development of the system, but then every time that you have a new client, you have a payment. Okay, GoSign is even better. And we think that the future is here because here the payment is not per client. It's every time that you have a digital sign, you have a fee. We are talking about cents. It's a small part of the cost of the banks, for example, or utilities. When you are going to sign a new power contract with a utility, you sign, they get 5 cents. So it's a very recurrent revenue.
Does that GoSign business compete directly with the likes of DocuSign and some of those big American players? And if so, what's the market share look like in their key markets?
Yeah, American players are also interested, and when we talk about market shares, they don't really, the market is just starting, so it's better to speak about the penetration of the solution. The American players are also big, and they will be big, but the current penetration of the market is below 5% in Europe. So that is one of the highest risk in the company, that if one day you will have the American players taking the business. But as I said before, I think that for a company, the trust of having your chamber as the identity provider is important. And also for the big American software players, they don't care about this business. This is a niche market. They prefer to be your partner. So we are not really sure that the American players are going to take all the Italian and Spanish identities. At the end of the day, you even have security reasons. I think that from the government side, what do you prefer? To have Camer Firma or LaxTrust having the identities of all of us here, or do you prefer to have Adobe or a big American player? So it's a risk from the technology side if you want, but from the trust side, we think that it's not a big risk.